All right, hi everybody. This is Craig from URComped. Once again, it is my pleasure and honor to have Dr. David Schwartz from the Center for Gaming Research at UNLV, as well as Forbes magazine. Dr. Dave, thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so as our newest tradition, let's go over. I want to discuss the two articles you put out on Forbes. Um, I guess earlier I said Forbes magazine. It's really Forbes Online.
Forbes.com.
Yeah, Forbes.com. So you had two really interesting articles. One was about a kerfuffle. Is that a good word to
Yeah,
use?
that's an apt word, kerfluffle. You don't hear that enough.
On YouTube in the world of slot machine influencers, basically people that film themselves playing slots and have built a huge audience. So we'll talk about that. And then Delaware going live with sports betting. And since that article came out, New Jersey came online as well, right?
Yeah, just today Governor Murphy just signed the law that makes it legal.
All right. So for anybody that's listening to this later, it is Monday, June 11th. New Jersey is now live, so that's exciting. But let's start with the YouTube kind of, I wouldn't call it a scandal, but the incident with YouTube and kind of that whole world that you uncovered. So why don't you walk us through what the article was about?
Well, it's a lot of stuff to cover in the article. So first of all, if you don't already know it, there are communities of people who enjoy watching other people play slot machines. And I'm guessing if you're listening to this show, watching this video, you probably are not opposed to playing slot machines yourself. So it's not probably too hard of a thing to imagine. So there are people that do this, and some of the personalities who do this have pretty big followings, around 100,000 or over 100,000 followers, lots of, millions of page views or video views. So it's a pretty big thing. And apparently they're making a lot of money for YouTube, with the ads and stuff like that on videos. So it's a pretty big deal. And also, a lot of them, well, some of them are able to do tours, or they'll actually visit casinos and have people come out and meet them and play slots with them. So it's a pretty big deal for the casino side too. And in talking about this, I've gotten some interesting comments from people in the industry talking about how they use these people to come to their casinos. And I think it's something that's expanding. All right, so this exists. Last Monday, or might have been Sunday, YouTube basically shut down two of the biggest channels and gave pretty much no reason and no warning, just said this has objectionable content. I think they said it was violent, although I don't know. I will say, if I can digress for a second, I have seen violence at the slot machine, but never with the exact, playing. It's usually would be two of the older patrons fighting over a machine.
Right, somebody
and they
sets
get
their...
pretty brutal. And I've got to tell you, some of the language I heard, what you would think was this sweet little old lady. I mean, it puts De Niro and Goodfellas to shame.
That is so true. They tilt up their chair.
Yeah, violence, anger over the slot. So I could see that, but that's not what this was. Basically, they just had their livelihoods ripped away from them with no explanation, just like, hey, we've been flagged for a violation and it violates our content guidelines. Later on, they got put back, but the story is really about how it happened and the implications for you. I'm guessing also a lot of your listeners, a lot of your viewers probably have their own little side hustle going on too. Either it's driving for Lyft or Uber or doing freelance work or something like that. And I think what happened to them has implications for all of us.
Now, were you already planning on doing an article on them, or it was like you found out about this kind of little niche when all this buzz happened about the channels being shut down?
It was something I looked into and I was interested in, and I was had done a little bit of research into it, but I didn't know a ton about it. I just knew it was out there. Again, just looking for stuff on YouTube, I'd come across these videos and like, oh, well, that's interesting, and I didn't really know that people did this. And apparently they've been doing it for a couple of years, so shows what I know. But it's yeah, I mean, I hadn't really been planning on doing a full article on it, but once this happened, I thought it was a really good opportunity.
Got it. And I guess we haven't mentioned the channels. One was Brian Christopher, who we at URComped are very familiar with. We did a Brian Christopher cruise for him and his channel, and that was back in March, where I mean, there was a good turnout. It may have been 20 cabins, maybe 25. So definitely a lot of fans wanted to go hang out with him. And the other is the big jackpot. And would you say those are the two biggest that are out there?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, no offense if you've got the other really big one, and I didn't catch it in my look through YouTube, but in my going through YouTube, those are the two biggest that I could find. There are a lot of other ones out there, but they're not quite at that level of popularity yet.
Got it. So you, what did they express as some of the, and I'm talking about Brian and Scott from the Big Jackpot, what did they say were some of their challenges, and what are the hardest parts about running that business, and their setting up the events or getting
It's a lot of
permission to
work. I
film?
mean, it's like anything else, and people might watch, you might say, well, this guy is just filming himself playing slot machines and making all this money. It's not fair. It's an easy living or whatever. It's a lot of work. Brian said that about 95% of the work he does happens before he even starts filming. So there's a lot of work involved in this, and it seems, I'm not sure I would want to trade places with either one of them, because it seems like it's a lot of work. Not like I'm a slacker, but even by my standards, that takes a lot of dedication.
Yeah, it's true, because I know when we were doing the cruise, we had some challenges getting filming approved. That's part of it, because, and actually I'd love to hear your feedback on it, having worked in surveillance before. But when some casinos say like no filming allowed, and I asked casino people why, and I'd love to hear your thoughts after. They said one is filming other patrons. They worry that somebody could, somebody that's playing could get offended, upset, that they're on camera and they didn't want to be. And the other is that people worry about, they'll pull up somebody will film where the surveillance cameras are. Like somebody could take the phone, point it to the ceiling, and then they'd have the right layout and be able to pull off some kind of heist or scam or whatever. But what are your thoughts on that kind of first step of actually getting permission to film? Like, what are the pros and cons from a casino perspective?
So a lot of it's a holdover from the old days. Let's say back in the 70s, when somebody would come to Vegas with maybe a woman that they weren't married to, and they're worried about a private investigator taking pictures of them or something like that. So a lot of it's a throwback to that. I think it's really evolved just because you can't really forbid cell phones on the floor, just because everybody has cell phones. You can't keep them off the casino floor. People, I know I've been hassled by people. Back when I was taking pictures of casino carpet, I had some maybe not so pleasant experiences doing that. But you can't really, it's tough. I don't think you can really put that toothpaste back in the tube at this point. I think people are taking pictures. As far as surveillance concerns, you should have 100% coverage of every game anyway. It doesn't matter where the camera is. You should have coverage of that game from multiple angles. And I'd be really surprised if in a casino in the US, you could get regulatory permission to run without showing that you have coverage of every slot machine. I mean, that's absolutely mandatory. So knowing where one camera is, I just don't see how that would help you, because theoretically there's no blind spots.
That's a good point.
Especially in the slot zone, you have to have multiple angles. I mean, definitely by the regulations, you need to be able to read that machine in case there's a jackpot. You need to capture that you have to capture them paying that off. So, yeah, I don't know.
Now, what happened, and this may be a future Forbes article, but I remember there was something that came out about some Russians, our team that had figured out how, when certain slot machines would hit. They kind of cracked the code on a certain manufacturer, and they would, by presumably analyzing some video, they were able to figure out, oh, this machine's going to hit, and they end up making a lot of money. I think it was Aristocrat Games. I can't remember. But Does that play into it at all, you think? Like,
I don't know. I mean, on one hand, casinos have to be really paranoid because there's a lot of people trying to scam money or steal money from them or cheat. So it's not like they're just paranoid for no reason. They're paranoid because people every day are in the casino trying to steal money or scam money. So they have to be very vigilant. It's just when does that get in the way of your customer relations and your hospitality? Where if somebody's used to taking selfies every place they go, they're not going to want you to tell them not to do it when they're doing something that they choose to do at their leisure time. It's not like it's not like they're voting or something in the ballot, whatever, the polling place, whatever they call that little closet. What's that called? Booth.
The voting booth. That's it. Yep.
It's not like something like that. This is basically what they're doing for fun. It would be like a restaurant telling people, don't take pictures of our food.
Yeah.
It's not really, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, right. It's free marketing. Like I mean, I think the wave, like casinos for the most part are going to get more and more loose and accepting of these influencers because really there's no downside for the casino. It's free marketing, right?
Yeah. I mean, there is, you do have privacy concerns. Somebody might object to being in somebody's live feed, but yeah, I don't know. I think I would handle that on a case-by-case basis. But
it is funny.
I mean, this is why if I ran a casino, I'd probably go out of business after one day. Just let everyone do what they want. Everyone's going to be nice. Everybody's here to have fun. Let them have fun. They're here to have fun. Let's not, free food for everybody.
No, you'd last at least a week. No, I think you could outlast the Lucky Dragon. It's funny, you brought up something that reminded me of, you said that in Las Vegas, they used to not allow filming because you didn't want a guy that's going with somebody that's not his wife to show up. So in Brazil, where my wife's from, they have a system where you go through a speed trap. They'll send you a camera, kind of like how here you can run a red light and you'll get something in the mail. There, they would show not just the front of your car, but they'd also show or not just the license plate, but they also show you driving. So you could be there's even less room to argue. It's clearly that's your car, that's you driving, you need to pay this ticket. But I guess some prominent senator was caught with somebody that wasn't his wife in that speeding ticket. So now they only show the license plate because that guy had the sway to change the rules. So yeah, it's kind of funny. So going back to the appeal, the appeal of these channels, when I think about it, I've watched them a lot because we, with URComped, we put out top 5 slot videos of the week. We like to highlight kind of cool new channels or established channels like Brian, the Big Jackpot. But if you look at the success of a show like Deal or No Deal on NBC, which is just really kind of boring when you think about it. There's one host that's just all right, pick a bag, and then there's beautiful women that are holding the bags, and there's they make it as appealing as possible, but really it's less appealing than a slot machine just because there's fewer and slower decisions and the payoff is all right, you win or not. Whereas with a YouTube channel where they're actually playing slots, it's you get that same suspense, it's happening a lot faster, and then the actual influencer, whether it's Brian Christopher or any of the other ones, that's kind of the Howie Mandel, right? It's do I like this guy? Do I like this person? Do I like the games they're playing? So for me, not being a big slot player or anything, it didn't make sense at first. But then when I kind of looked at it through that frame, and I watched my wife actually start watching it, and she's oh, that's kind of cool. And before you knew it, she was 20 minutes into a video. Then I can see the appeal, I think, for people, especially those that are super into slot machines.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything else. There's a niche for it. There's a definite audience for it. So I think that's good, and good for the people doing this that they're able to capitalize on that. And it takes a lot of talent for sure.
It does. It does. So as of today, Monday, June 11th, I believe monetization is still turned off for both those channels, right?
That's what I was told. Well, I don't know about both of them, but definitely for the one of them.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, here's hoping that that gets turned back on for Brian. At least Brian was the one I saw on Twitter that I think still didn't have monetization turned back on. So hopefully that's back up and running. For you, Brian, good luck. I know me and the doctor, I think I can speak for both of us, hoping that
Yeah.
gets turned back on. So the other article, or any other thoughts on the YouTube thing?
It's really interesting, and it's definitely some interesting personalities, and it's something I want to write more about.
Cool.
That's pretty
Cool.
much what I got to. That's pretty much where I'm at right now. I think it's fascinating. It's really fascinating.
It is. It is. And I think there is definitely, I think casinos, it'll be interesting to see actually how casinos start engaging with that more, because the marketing budgets that casinos have are massive, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's like that's usually the biggest expense, or one of the biggest expenses that a casino takes on, because the profit margin of gambling is so high that they all just dump more money into marketing. So it'll be interesting to see if casinos start wooing these influencers and investing some of their own money into it, or they look at it like, well, these people need places to play anyway. Like, why not? Let's just wait, like, kind of let it ride out, see if these influencers show up, and not actually pay people to come in. I don't know. Like, it'll just be interesting to see.
It does seem like there could be some issues there. So if you give somebody an appearance fee and they bring in 100 people to gamble, is that a way of not licensing them as a junket representative? And are there concerns about that? There could be regulatory concerns just with paying them to show up, if you're paying them with the expectation that they'll bring other people to play. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a gray area, I think, because definitely, if you have Britney Spears play your casino, yeah, obviously you're hoping she's going to bring a lot of gamblers to play, but it's kind of different where what they're doing it's not like they're performing in the showroom, they're playing slot machines.
Right.
And are they almost like an independent host or someone like that, where they're bringing their book of gamblers in with them? I don't know. I maybe if you're a host, you want to start getting into this and developing your book and using that. I don't know. Just an idea. Maybe not a good one. But I think that more casinos will do this just because there is so much competition, and especially around stuff like tech, there's so much anxiety around that. I think that once one of them starts to do it, the other ones will do it too, just because they want to stay competitive. Even if you're in a tribal casino somewhere and you've got maybe one other casino in close proximity to you, well, if they're doing all these promotions with these YouTubers and they're getting dozens of people to come for each of them and you're not, at some point your CEO is going to ask you, well, why isn't this us? So I think and that's when you get into a bidding war, and probably looking at the whole life cycle, that could be when the personalities start pricing themselves out. So, I could see this definitely taking off and having an interesting ride. There's a lot of ways I think it could go.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we're at the early stages of it, obviously. So yeah, I, like you, I'm excited to kind of from the sidelines see how it plays out, and I'm hoping the good people that are making these channels continue to thrive and do well, because in my interaction with all of them, they've all been super friendly, the ones I've talked to. So yeah, and hopefully we can do more URComped events like we did with Brian, and like we've got with July 30th.
July 30th, Miami.
That's right. That's right. So, all right, let's move on to the other article. So, the article you posted last week was about Delaware going live, being the second state to have legalized sports betting. Since then, a third has been added. So, why don't you fill us in? What was the article about? And, what's going on with sports betting today?
So, the big story was that the governor of Delaware placed the ceremonial, I guess, first sports bet on in Delaware, bet on the Phillies to win a game, and incredibly enough, the Phillies won the game. So good for him. Don't know if he cashed his ticket. I'd like to find that would have been a good story. Nobody covered that story. What the angle that I liked was that the CEO of William Hill US, Joe Asher, actually broke into gambling at a Delaware racetrack, when he was a teenager, and then later called a race at Dover Downs where this first bet was taken as a teenager. And he was the youngest track announcer in history. So it's kind of like, imagine if you work someplace as a teenager. So like if I went back to the Tropicana where I was Mr. Peanut and something big happened and I was one of the people behind it happening, that would be really cool. That would be really cool.
That would.
So I wanted to get a little bit of his story because I thought he's an interesting story, and also just wanted to give a little bit of context for this and why it's important.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, is there any video out there of him being the horse announcer? Because that sounds like a fun gig.
It's a while ago. Yeah, it's pretty cool, and he worked a lot of shows. Not shows, worked a lot of tracks. So really interesting, it's kind of stories that I really like where, he's been down in the trenches, did that for many years, paid his way through college, writing about sports, not sports, but writing about racing and betting, and then went to law school and then dropped that and, took on what eventually became William Hill US. So to me, that's pretty interesting. Cool story.
That is a cool story, and it's good to see, William Hill, they've done a phenomenal job. I know, it's probably a brand that in the U.S. didn't have a lot of recognition early on, but every time I go to Nevada, I see new sports books, William Hill sports books that are popping up. I know their app is big, and so they've done a phenomenal job marketing and rolling out their brand in the U.S. And so in Delaware, what's William Hill's relationship with Delaware? How are they involved out there?
So they are the risk manager for Delaware, meaning they don't run the sports books. They pretty much set the line, but they don't actually run the sports book. They set the line and they do all that stuff. The more bookmaking aspect, they don't do the operations.
Interesting. Okay. And then the second state that just opened up is which one?
New Jersey. And William Hill is also active there in the more traditional role, like you'll see him in Nevada, where they're actually running the sports book. So and I have a picture of it in the article, the Monmouth Park sports book has William Hill's logo on it. And presumably when the Ocean Resort, which used to be Rebel, reopens later this month, that'll also say William Hill Sportsbook.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
And so as of today, are all the casinos that are in New Jersey that are open, do they have sportsbook operations that are live? Do we know?
Don't think it's live yet because the governor just signed the law now, so I'm not sure when they're going to actually go live, but they should. Hopefully they prepared. They did do the whole lawsuit thing that led to the court decision, so I would hope that they prepared at least some kind of space to do this, because that would be really terrible if they didn't after, years of the legal battle they won, and then they didn't have any sports books. I would be really disappointed. I wouldn't be mad. I would just be disappointed.
Yeah, I'm with you. I gotta assume that they've done the legwork and they're probably prepared for when the switch got flipped. Now it's kind of funny timing to turn on with NHL and NBA just getting finished today. Obviously, the day after a Triple Crown winner. So congratulations on that to the horse and Mr. Balfour. But there's probably some pros to opening up on a kind of a slow time of year, right? As opposed to opening day of football season or something.
I think it lets them really ease into it, as opposed to, you're opening up in the middle of football season, would probably be the worst, or right before football season. Suddenly, hey, you've got to hire and train all these people, and then boom, you've got all the sharps coming out, trying every angle. I think it's better, opens up in the summer when it's a little bit slower, kind of build up to it, and then by the time you hit NFL, everybody's in better shape.
Yep. They've got some baseball bets under the belt. Probably World Cup will do well. So I think that's probably good. Now, So we've got Nevada open up for a long time, obviously Delaware, New Jersey. Now, what's your gut feeling for other states opening up? Do you have a feel for which maybe the next dominoes to fall? Like, how are these going to start coming more and more frequently? What's kind of your feeling on how it's going to roll out across the country?
I think we'll probably see more in the Northeast right off the bat. As it continues, I think we'll see it spread more across the country, but definitely the Northeast and the South are the ones that have been the most proactive and I think are the farthest along in the process.
Got it. Okay. And by the way, I just said got it. And my mom, who started listening to our podcast recently, she's like, Craig, you say got it too much. So anyway, I guess anybody out there you can make a drinking game out of these podcasts. Yeah. Anytime I say got it, take a swig. I'm going to work on not saying that. All right. So how do you think this will impact Las Vegas? Losing the monopoly on legal sports betting, Las Vegas, Nevada as a whole, what impact do you think it will have?
So it could go two different ways, or maybe a third way that I haven't thought of. But I've thought of two ways. I'll be more accurate. I've thought of two ways that it could go. Number one is that people figure out that, hey, we can bet on sports in Atlantic City or Wilmington or wherever. Let's not go to Vegas for the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. That's number one. Number two is that even if that does happen, which it might or might not, more people are familiar with sports betting. So when they show up in Nevada, they don't just see this room with all these numbers up on the board and they're freaked out. Well, what's that mean? Like negative 110. I don't think, no, that's like negative number. That's bad. I don't like that. So I think you'll have more, it kind of, maybe pretentious thing to say, but I've said it, it kind of broadens the funnel. If you think about a funnel with potential bettors kind of going from here to here because people are just more used to it. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe it's an overall positive, but it's 2% of the total gaming revenue. So it's not like they live or die by this, and if you asked them honestly, probably most Nevada casinos who could not, if they eliminated their sports books, I doubt it would give them a huge hit to the bottom line, just from the gaming revenue. Now what happens is you've got a big player. So let's say a casino says, we're going to get rid of the sports book. What happens is you've got a big craps player who likes to also bet on sports. So he wins a bunch of money from you on craps, goes across the street and bets on football and then stays over there and loses the money back there. That's what they don't see happening. But, just as itself, it doesn't create a ton of revenue.
Right. It's like an amenity that...
Yeah, it's an amenity, totally.
And you brought up Britney Spears earlier, too, right? Like they make money on the gate, obviously, from Britney, but also, ideally, she's bringing in people that maybe get comp tickets to see her, but they're going to gamble a ton because she's there. And by the way, I heard she may be switching venues. She's not playing in Hollywood anymore.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not totally up on Britney, so...
Well, as a card-carrying member of her fan club, I have heard she's switching to Park MGM across the street. So.
All right.
That would be an interesting. We should do a future podcast on that, on like the bidding war for talent, because that's got to be interesting. Because I also think it's fascinating. Was it the Mayweather McGregor fight where MGM bought up the rights for even the pay-per-view broadcast? So they're broadcasting it, or they had the event at T-Mobile, but only MGM properties, at least in Southern Nevada, could broadcast the thing live. So every other casino on the Strip was just locked out. They couldn't show the fight. So it's just, it's interesting how these casinos probably do the math. I'm like, is it worth spending $20 million up front or whatever it is, and made up that number, where we know that any gambler that wants to see this event has to come to our property.
Yeah, it's part of it.
So anyway, to go to how this will impact Vegas, I am with you 100%. I think as these pop up in, say, Louisiana, Mississippi, there's probably going to be a dip in the first year in Nevada, is my guess, where like this is the first March Madness where it's available in Louisiana, first March Madness where it's available in Mississippi. I think some people that maybe have gone to Las Vegas every year for the last 5 years we'll just try somewhere new. Just, hey, let's mix it up. And then the risk is that everyone swarms to New Orleans, and they have such
Yeah.
a great time. They do such a great job that they're like, well, let's go back there this year. So, to your point, there's going to be obviously competition. So Vegas won't have 100% of the people that want to watch and gamble. It's just a matter of will the funnel grow enough to more than offset that.
That's the issue.
The other thing that will be curious is daily fantasy sports, how that gets affected. My opinion is that it's going to drop. Daily fantasy sports is going to get less popular in the states where sports betting is legal. I personally I enjoy betting on sports. I don't really like daily fantasy sports because I enjoy just picking a team, betting, cheering for that team, and I can just watch the game without feeling conflicted because I got a tight end on this team and then a quarterback on the other team. But I think a lot of people play daily fantasy sports just to get that adrenaline rush of having money on the game. So anyway, so my feeling is that DFS is going to drop in the States. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it definitely could. You've already seen them talk about branding some of the sports books after them, and so I guess that means they wouldn't really push it. I think it's definitely it's still going to be a market for it. I just think it's not going to be quite as big if you do have the actual legit sports betting.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I can see FanDuel being a player. I mean, they're clearly good at marketing, right? They went from zero to every single commercial during football season was FanDuel for a while. Or they replaced Viagra as the number one advertiser during football season. And then there's a backlash, and obviously, a lot of states shut it down, and that was a whole kerfuffle on its own.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out with legal sports betting, how FanDuel plays in there. Cool. So, any other thoughts on sports betting rolling out?
It's a story I want to see develop. Does it change in other states? Is it more than 2% in other states? Is it 5%? Is it 10%? Is it 20%? It could be. We don't know yet. We'll find out. That's why, as they say, that's why they play the games. You never know until you play.
Yep. And actually, one point before we wrap up is I did hear an interesting podcast with your kind of the subject of the article, Joe Asher, where he talked about how tax rates in different states will determine in a large way the success or failure of sports betting, because he said that they're going into New Jersey because the tax rate is much lower, whereas in Pennsylvania they want to charge something like 30 or 40% of gross revenue, which basically would automatically turn them unprofitable. They couldn't make money in Pennsylvania, so he said, we're not even really trying to get in there. So that will be another thing that as we observe the rollout, it'll be fun to see how these tax rates and different things that are unique to each state's gaming laws, how that affects gambling in each state.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be part of the picture.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Dave, we are only, a month and a half away from the meetup at sea, July 30th. I know we've got plenty of bookings. We made a few bookings last week. We still have a few spots available. So if you're out there, you're interested in meeting Dr. Dave in person, meeting me, talking casino business, entrepreneurship, meeting some other cool URComped people, come on out July 30th, meetup at sea out of Miami on the Royal Caribbean Mariner. The seas should be amazing. For comp level players, there's a great chance you're going to get a comp cruise. For players that maybe aren't high rollers or mid-level rollers, you can still get a heavily discounted casino rate. So no reason not to come. July 30th, go to urcompt.com, check it out. And Dr. Dave, thank you as always. Look forward to talking next week.
Thanks. It's going to be great.
All right. Have a great week.
Cool. You too.